Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Between Two Chairs. This episode, we're going to talk about the takeaways from the Florida Realtors Annual Convention and Conference that just took place in Orlando at the Shingle Creek Resort. I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Fernando Arencibia, who won 2 awards for the first time in Florida Realtor history. 2 different awards were awarded to one person, so congratulations to my partner. One was for the Realtor Achievement Award, which is awarded to brokers for that have been brokers for 3 or more years, and the accomplishments that they have done and the impact that they've made on the brokerage industry. And the second one was for his work as commercial realtor, right? The Commercial Realtor Award. He chaired the Commercial Alliance Committee this year and has brought a ton of tools and services to Florida commercial realtors. And he's just an amazing human who is always giving to our community. And he's sitting here going like, enough, cut, stop. No, you didn't tell me you were going to do this. But that got us kicked off. So.
There you go. Thank you, partner. That was very, very kind. It was a long week of convention and governance business and all those good things, and we certainly learned a lot. There's just a lot of information that you gather and a lot of connectivity with brokers throughout the state, and just to give people a little bit of a sense of how things are structured. This is the annual conference, which is open up to all. There's also a section of it which is governance, when we have meetings with all of the committees, and there's actually a lot of information that you get from the committees as well. The way that the conference is structured is that the first day there is a day where we have a CCIM commercial day. We have 2 CCIM presentations, usually panel discussions, and then we do our, what was our second time doing it, but it's become a tradition, the Red R networking event that night. That's Tuesday. That day also is a day for the YPNs. They do RE Bar Camp, which is a really interesting and exciting event. Miami does a great one here every year. Last 2 years I've done it at FIU School of Business, which has been fantastic. And then the next 2 days are, full conference schedule, that Wednesday and Thursday, and that includes an expo of vendors all around the country and all around the state. And then the following, 3 days are all governance meetings. We would love to share with you some of the things, some of the takeaways that we've gathered from this conference.
Correct. And one of my takeaways was insurance, because that's been a huge issue in the state, and we've been hearing it across the board. I mean, you don't even have to be in real estate to be noticing what's going on with insurance. It's not just in Florida. It's a nationwide problem or issue or challenge, I should say. But we did get some updates that I thought were very interesting. So there is a free home hurricane inspection that the state does. You can go to mysafeflhome.com, and it tells you in there how to go ahead and get the insurance. And then once you, not the insurance, but the inspection for the insurance. And then once you get that hurricane inspection, if you've done home strengthening to your property, then the insurance company has to give you credits for that and give you relief in the pricing. So that was interesting. That was a good thing that the state's doing, and a lot of people don't know that those inspections are for free. We also found out that for the first time in 6 years, insurance companies have showed profits. They had been losing money ever since 2016, and when that happens, it eats into the reserves and puts them in a precarious position. For those of you who think, that insurance companies shouldn't be making a profit or that all of these increases are going into their pocket, that is not the case. Florida law caps profits for insurance companies at 4.65%. So I thought that was really interesting. Insurance is definitely more of a service industry, not a huge profitability center when it comes to especially homeowners insurance. We also found out that the reinsurance market in Florida has seen some improvements. There's still room for more since price increases for reinsurance is at 27%. The state would like to see that cut in half by next year, but it's a big improvement because it had been going up 50 to 60% a year. And then I know that you and your commercial team are also working specifically on commercial insurance, which is completely different from homeowners insurance. So maybe you could just tell us, I know you're in the very beginning phases, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about what your group is putting together and hoping to accomplish.
Well, I think that one of the things that was interesting because these conversations, you begin to see a line or a trend in that all the conversations are about the two biggest issues that are facing the commercial sector. One of them is credit tightening. And so Trep was one of the presenters in the first panel by CCIM on Tuesday, and Lonnie, as you know, it's he's just amazing. I love the way he presents and the way that he digests information and provides it in a way that is understandable. And one of the things that really catches your eye is when he breaks down CMBS loans, commercial mortgage-backed securities. And he was showing us a chart about private label CMBS and agency label CMBS. And I mean, the numbers year over year are staggering. There's a 52% reduction in volume of loans, from July of last year to July of this year. I mean, they went from $57 million in loans, 109 loans, to 27.5 million with a count of 69. So they're doing smaller loans, even with private labels, 63% reduction from like $53 million in volume to $19 million in volume. So of course, the credit tightening is definitely there. And then the other thing is about specifically with the multifamily, he broke down the expense and did a deep dive. And, the largest year-over-year increase in insurance expenses at the top of the line, it's Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, right? With an average of over 28% increase per unit change, right? And so that's how they measure it. And, that's an issue that when it comes to insurance in the state of Florida, for residential insurance, the legislature has done a very heavy lift to basically address tort reform so that we can begin to see insurance companies coming back into the marketplace. And we're starting to see that some of those metrics are aligning, And one of them is that we're seeing a reduction in lawsuits, right, which, again, enhances the profitability sector of the insurance carrier. And as we continue to monitor those factors, the idea is that we're going to get more of the private insurers to come back so that we eventually have balance in the market. And at some point, Citizens would become what it was originally intended to be, which is the insurer of last resort. The problem with commercial insurance, and I do have to give kudos to Gus Fonte, Lorenzo Perez Jr. Lorenzo, we gotta interview you on this. He's just so smart. He is the next, and he's the incoming president of the commercial board for the Miami Association of Realtors. And we had a great sit down with Trey Goldman out of Florida Realtors, who is heading advocacy for all insurance related matters. And the issue is that the issue is not the same. Right. And right. We had conversations with a couple of lobbyists, and we realized that they themselves don't understand that the issue is very different. And instead of getting very complex, let me just say this. Number one, insurance in commercial is basically like if you were stacking a sandwich, right? The insurance risk is divided among different stacks. The other thing that I would say is that we have lost reinsurance, carriers significantly on the commercial sector, right? We're down to 2. Technically, we're down to 3, and one of them being Lloyd's of London. But historically, the numbers are so skewed, they're so expensive that it might as just well be 2. So the big fear is that if we lose another reinsurance carrier in the state of Florida for commercial insurance, we're going to be down to 1. Right, so we're going to have absolutely no competition, and this is a freight train that will have no stop. Why is that important? Well, if I may, can I just kind of iterate a little bit here? One of the biggest things is that if you're buying a home and you get a loan and you get a 30-year mortgage on your home, whether your insurance goes up in price, right, and your taxes go up in price, and you have an escrow account, you know that you're going to be paying more a month, right? Well, the same thing would happen to a commercial property owner that has a loan on a property, and all of a sudden those expenses go up. The problem is that on the mortgage side, when banks evaluate, right, the viability of giving you a commercial loan, they do something called a debt service credit ratio, right? And that ratio has to be a certain amount. So it's usually 1.2 or below. They're looking for a ratio of your expense versus your income on that property has to be self-sustaining, and equity plays a role in that. What happens is that if all of a sudden your insurance prices go up, right, and it messes with that DSCR number, then all of a sudden the bank might say, we're going to need more money from you, right? We gave you this loan and maybe we gave you 70% of the price to buy this property, but now the debt service ratio doesn't work for us, right, because your expenses has gone up. So on top of the fact that now I have to pay more for insurance, I have to pay more taxes. Now I also have to come up with money to provide. It's almost like coming back and now having to do another set of down payment for a property that I already own in order to meet that ratio. So it's incredibly impactful, and it's something that is called a technical default. That's why the commercial insurance is such an issue, and that's why a lot of the legislators and a lot of the people that we spoke to, they understand what's happening on the residential insurance side, but on the commercial side, it is it's not a widely known issue, and we're working to find a solution that can address it.
Right. So I just wanted to clarify, you had said the debt service cover ratio had to be less than 1. I think you meant more than 1. 1 or higher, because if not, it's a negative cash flow. So okay, I just wanted to clarify that. So we're supposed to be demystifying, not commercial. Exactly. But yeah, so to your point, that's when the capital calls come out if you're in a syndication kind of deal, and if not, you end up having some issues. So I think it's awesome that your group is looking at that, and that was brought to the forefront of not just Florida Realtors, but also our legislators. And I know you guys had a conversation with the new insurance commissioner as well, and put that on his radar. So thank you for doing that. I think that's amazing. Well, and I think to your point, we are going to see some relief, right? Yeah.
No, the credit goes there to Trey and Gus and Lorenzo for having the foresight to have that conversation while he was there with us.
Correct.
And that's another great thing here, because we did get 2 great presentations during public policy. So, we have a public policy committee, and we have an array of think tanks that are part of that committee that have to do with things that are specific to our industry, second homes, land use, taxation, obviously insurance. And so we always have great people that present during those meetings, and this year was no different. And having the state of Florida's, insurance commissioner there to not only present but take questions, from our realtors was incredibly impactful. But I would love for you to talk a little bit about the other great presentation that we received that had to do with the Everglades Foundation, right? And
he's amazing. That was a presentation by Eric Eisenberg. He's the CEO of the Everglades Foundation, and Florida Realtors has had a really close relationship with the Everglades Foundation for a really long time because, we always love to say in real estate, people don't come to Miami or to Florida in general, but Miami in particular for our mountains. They come for our water. And about 10 years ago, we had a massive, massive green algae bloom and red tide. So red tide and green algae over on the west coast of Florida, and then horrible green algae bloom on the east coast, especially in Martin and St. Lucie County. So the realtors got together and we did a study on the economic impact of the green algae on just those two counties. There were 16 counties that were affected that year, but St. Lucie and Martin saw a huge drop off. So once we did that study, we showed that just in those two counties, there was $1 billion impact on real estate alone. It didn't talk about tourism. It didn't talk about all the offshoots of there. So once you put those numbers in front of the legislature, you start getting attention, and people start, you hear it in the news, oh, green algae, some fish died. You don't necessarily look too far. You think it's just a once in a while thing, but this really highlighted the importance. So we worked with the Everglades Foundation. We raised a lot. We got a lot of funding, and they also were able to work on redoing the flow of the Everglades. So what was super cool is that we stayed at the Rosen Shingle Creek, which is a beautiful resort up there, but the Shingle Creek also happens to be the headwater in the very, very start of the Florida Everglades. And super interesting, we're going to include a link in the notes, but if you follow the Florida Everglades Foundation, you'll see what used to be the natural flow of water, how it was diverted after there were some major storms during that first that first settlement up in Shingle Creek. So it kind of wiped out that area. And based on the result of the floods that happened in the 30s and 40s, the Army Corps of Engineers diverted the natural flow. And that flow went out through St. Lucie and Martin counties and through the Gulf on the other side. So we have the state of Florida has embarked on the largest ever project by the Army Corps of Engineers. It is a $3 billion project, and it's basically going to be creating the kidneys of the Everglades to help redo the flow, clean out the water, recharge the Biscayne aquifer, and preventing those outflows. So that was amazing. And Eric he's wonderful. He's so dedicated. He's great at being very clear on the issues. And he says, as goes the Everglades, so goes Florida. So what does the Everglades have to do with commercial real estate? Absolutely everything. Right? Because it all flows from there, literally. So
we need to.
No pun. I didn't mean that pun, but.
But you did a great job, partner. We definitely got to have him on the podcast. He is incredibly passionate about, and I really love, one of the things that I thought was really great is that they hired an economist. So they have an economist that is going to create all of this auxiliary documentation about the impact of the Everglades in our economy, and and how interrelated those two things are. And I completely agree. Another thing that happens in this conference is that we get a lot of economic updates. Florida Realtors has a great economist, Dr. Brad O'Connor, who always keeps us updated. And, we get a monthly update and, a quarterly update. And there's a lot of tools online that can provide real drilled down information per county that is available to all of Florida Realtors members. I thought that in his presentation, there's obviously the conversation is, why is it that we have higher interest rates but we still have higher prices? We haven't seen a reduction of that. And there were two slides that I thought were really impactful for me. Number one is that in conversations that I've had with people that are looking at the residential sector as a potential place to invest, there are people that are waiting for this, foreclosure crisis that may never come, or this, sense that prices have to come down, the pressures are there. One of them is that when you really look at the mortgages in distress, I mean, it's damn near zero.
Right. It was minimal. Yeah.
It was minimal that, you know, it's hard to put into words that you had a small peak, you know, during the pandemic, and before then there was a peak during, Hurricane Irma, but those were short sustaining, you know, but now those numbers are super low. The other one that I thought was interesting is, so he's got a slide of one of the things that we monitor, and one of the metrics to follow is, you know, out-of-state driver's license exchanges, you know.
Yeah.
And, we always talk about that's an important component. For us in the commercial sector, we also like that there's something called a U-Haul index, which is phenomenal, which is really about people that are picking up one-way trips, you know, from one state to another. And so when you put those things together, so he puts this slide, and in the slide is everybody who's moving in here in a significant manner and where they're coming from. So New Jersey is there, California, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Texas, Massachusetts, Virginia, right? And then everybody is looking at the obvious fact, which is New York is missing. Well, the reason New York is missing is because he had to put it way, way up in the chart. So now he opens it up and it's a bigger chart. So I thought that was really interesting. But he says that, you know, we got natural growth in our demographics, and then we have all of this influx, and that's a big part of that component. So I thought that was really interesting.
Agreed. And then some of the information was just kind of a reminder. So some of it was related to short-term property rentals and the hospitality industry. And it's basically just a reminder. And I think it's very timely, especially now with the movie Freedom out, and the fact that Miami Realtors are kind of, I don't want to say our goal for this year, but our topic for this year was really educating our members on human trafficking. So Section 509.096 of Title 33 in the Florida statutes is a human trafficking awareness training and policies requirement for employees of public lodging establishments, and that includes for hosts of short-term rentals, that since 2021 you've had to ensure that employees who perform any housekeeping duties in the rental units or who work at the front desk and receive the guests, that they have to be trained in the signs of human trafficking, and you have to post a notice. So that was just kind of a reminder, but I wanted to bring it up because I know there are a lot of Airbnb and short-term property rental owners who don't comply with that, and the fine's like $2,000 a day. So I wanted to highlight that. And then the other thing, obviously, was when JP, who is amazing, JP Freitas, who was the liaison for Florida Realtors with the commercial committee, he reminded us that the business rent tax is going down from 5.5% to 4.5% in December 1st of this year. And then he's estimating that sometime by August or September of next year that it's going to go all the way down to 2.5%. 2%. And that's before the municipalities tack on their amount. But we're still working on, Florida Realtors is still working on chipping away at that, both at the state level to eliminate it, and then also at the municipal level. And just that one little 1% for those few months saves $260 million to business owners. So I thought that was another great takeaway. Absolutely.
And that was during our Commercial Alliance Committee meeting. And I think the highlight for me of the meeting was having Robin Webb, who is an amazing realtor and an expert and focuses all of his attention in hotels and hospitality. And his presentation, was incredible. And look, no surprise here, right? The hospitality industry is Florida's, largest industry, Florida's largest employer. I thought he gave some great stats. The projection for 2023 is that it's going to generate an annual gross income of $4 billion. No, $4 trillion. No, how much? What is that?
I was going to use that as one of my stats, but I looked at that number and I'm like, I have to verify that because it's huge. So yeah.
Well, if it's coming from Robin, I kind of would believe it, but
but I wasn't sure. I'm like, that can't be just Florida, right? So
well, but he did say, and I thought it was interesting that Florida is America's largest supplier of hotel rooms, that we have more hotel rooms per capita I think just more hotel rooms in total than any other state in the nation. And they've seen a revenue increase, almost 25% since the pandemic. For me, what I thought was really interesting is I always get these calls about, he says the hotel sector and the hotel business is very rough and tumble, and especially when you're on the brokerage side. And and now I understand it better, because he says basically last year there were 200 hotels in the entire state of Florida that traded, right? And so there's a minimal side, and whenever I get those calls of people that are looking for hotels, it's it never really pans out. I never really know that they're the real deal. From now on, I'm just calling Robin Webb and just have him take care of that. But man, the information was really, really valuable. Understanding what is the cap rate that people are looking for to acquire a hotel, understanding, how the average daily rate, which is the biggest metric when you're evaluating, what a hotel is generating, is the average daily night or, daily rate of what you're charging per night. And the fact that they've seen such an increase in that number is significant. But I thought his presentation was incredible.
Agree, and I already have him down. I want to invite him to speak on our podcast specifically about the South Florida hotel market, because I think he's just a wealth of information. I think it would be fun to share that with our listeners. Absolutely. So I'm glad I picked another stat too.
He's also a bit of a character. I like his approach, his demeanor. He's a great instructor.
He not only sells hotels, he actually owns hotels. And the cool thing about hotels, if you're an owner, is it's not necessarily the real estate that you own, it's the business. So some hotels own the real estate, they own the land and the business. So you can actually get SBA loans for hotels, which you can't get for a lot of other commercial properties. You can get SBA loans for self-storage, because that's also considered a business, and for hotels. So I thought that was great. So stay tuned. We're going to try to get him on for future.
I think that when you first told me, well, we should do this, we're fresh, we're off, and I was, what are we going to talk about? And you go like, whoa, what did we learn? And then I start looking down through my notes, and I start looking at pictures of, I'm a habitual picture taker of, slides, even though I know they're going to send it to us. But I just take them because I want to review them that night or whatever it is. Half of the time I don't even end up reviewing them. But now I'm looking back like, wow, there's a lot of good information.
There's a lot of good content. There's a lot of good content that we get takeaways. And I think it makes a difference. And,
for sure.
We always are kind of like, oh my gosh, it's so long. We're going to be away from our business. We're going to be away from our families. And of course, the minute you leave town for either vacation or a conference, work gets really, really busy. So if any of you are really slow, just hop on a plane, get in the car, drive, 4 or 5 hours away. And I can guarantee you that your clients will be missing you and start calling you, and
they can smell it when you're out of town. They can smell it, I promise you. One of the things that I, as you're getting ready to go back out into the conference circuit, next week you'll be at ICSC.
Correct, ICSC Orlando.
Right? Yeah. Which is, what does ICSC stand for as we're demystifying?
The International Council of Shopping Centers.
All right, good. You see, I mystify and she demystifies. So I should have clarified that in the in the moniker of our presentation. One last thing I will say is, think about the composition of an association like the Florida Realtors. Over 230,000 members, right? So they get a lot of data, they get a lot of feedback from the marketplace. The overwhelming majority of those members are residential brokers. They only focus on residential. And I've had this conversation, and I kind of want to end it with this because I want to get your opinion on it. I've had conversations with people that are, all they do is they focus on commercial. So they're not, as excited about getting an economic breakdown of, what's happening in the marketplace and all that stuff. I think that there is value there. I think that especially because of the variety of things that we serve. When we talk about retail and office, we're really it all comes down to consumer behavior, and consumers are going to behave based on the opportunities that are beside them. You and I always concern ourselves with when companies are coming into a marketplace. Do they have enough affordable housing units for their employees, right? Because what the companies want to attract, right, talent, and they want, and in order to attract talent, the ecosystem surrounding it, the economy surrounding it, the real estate surrounding it, is a big part of that. So I think that there is value in having a pulse on the broad strokes, at least, of the residential market, to see how people are living, what they have to contest with, what they have to deal with, because I think it does reverberate into the clients that we serve.
Oh, most definitely. And I often post stuff about the state of the housing market in Miami-Dade County, specifically because, in the retail sector, we always say, retail follows rooftops. And to your point, if pricing is so expensive or there's not enough housing available at all levels, I don't even look at affordable housing because, you need housing at all levels. It has to be affordable. It has to be affordable to the people at the top end, the middle, the bottom, and the extreme, extremely poor. So I think having a pulse on that is extremely helpful because it's going to show you, like, right now, it's interesting because the issues that are happening in the commercial sector have nothing to do with housing in the overall economy. It specifically has to do with the interest rates and the raising of the interest rates to control inflation. But the raising of the interest rates in Miami-Dade, in South Florida in general, but in Florida in general, we haven't seen that. The consumer is still spending. Right. The pricing, to your point that you made earlier with Dr. Brad O'Connor's insights, is that, housing costs are still going up. So the mortgage rates haven't really affected buying. What's affected more than anything is inventory and the lack thereof, right? But so what's affecting the commercial sector? People are still going out. They're still eating in restaurants. I mean, all of the restaurants that we tried to book were totally packed. And I'm sure it's going to be the same thing with ICSC, right? That all the ones that are good near the convention center are going to be packed. Here, locally, our restaurants are full. Back to school stores were full. Like, everything is moving. So the housing sector, the housing portion isn't necessarily affecting the commercial sector right now. Right. Normally it will, but it's an indicator, right? So if they don't get inflation down and if it keeps getting more and more expensive to live here, then I think the commercial sector is going to have a much harder time because we're currently building and people bought on the expectation that prices would continue to appreciate. They can continue to pass through the higher property taxes and the much higher insurance. But at some point, if housing doesn't give, I think there's going to be a bigger issue for retail and office and warehouse and everything. So down the road. Important
to know that aspect of it. Plus, I think there's something about having a holistic understanding of the entire marketplace, and that includes the residential side. All right, are you ready for your
I'm ready for my fun stat, yes, in preparation.
Well, listen, nobody said it had to be fun. Some of these stats are just stats, all right? But it's the stat of the day.
I don't know. To me, stats are just fun. Okay. Maybe that's my problem. It doesn't matter if it's a positive stat or not. I just love the numbers. So,
all right, nerd.
Takes one to know one. So just get in preparation for ICSC, as TK, the CEO of the Miami Realtors, loves to say, it's great to be Florida, but it's great to be Miami. And this stat is in general, it's great to be Florida. This is from the Shopping Center Business magazine, and it said retail reigns in Florida. South Florida specifically is underserved per capita on the retail side. So the square footage versus the population is less per person in South Florida than it is on a national level. So because of that, according to Colliers, the second quarter of 2023, retail vacancies were like at historic lows. In Broward County, 3.5%.
Wow.
Palm Beach County, 3.7%. And Miami-Dade County, 3.1%. So if you are coming here thinking that real estate is on sale because of all of the issues that are going on in the credit market and you're a tenant,
Yeah.
it is not on sale if you're a tenant in South Florida looking for retail space. And it's because, similar to housing, there's just no vacancy.
Right.
And we're not building huge amounts. You know, World Center is one that's adding a lot of retail locally. There are a couple of big projects going on in Broward and Palm Beach, but not enough to keep up with the demand.
Yeah, that's...
So woohoo, it's great to be in Miami. Yours?
Well, I'll tell you, because I wanted to, bring out some numbers, but going back to the question about the delinquency rates, and even when you put the delinquency rates of residential and commercial together, but if you look at the delinquency rates of mortgages, and I read something else that says over 50% of property owners were equity rich, and I forgot what was the metric to to call it equity rich, but there's been a consistent reduction of delinquency rates. I think right now, at the end of quarter 2 of 2023, it was at 3.37%. That's down year over year, and it is officially the lowest delinquency rate we've had on record since record keeping began in 1979.
And that's for CMBS or for home mortgages?
That's just for home mortgages.
That's for home mortgages.
Yeah, that's for home mortgages.
Okay. I wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no, that was for home mortgages. Yeah.
So, and talking about CMBS, I can't even say the word without thinking of Lonnie Hendry, who you gave the shout out to. So we'll put a link to their podcast in our notes as well, because they do a fabulous job on the Trepwire podcast. They release it every Thursday afternoon. I listen to it every Friday morning, and it's just a ton of information. So,
and Lonnie is another one of these people that has an incredible way of expressing complex information in a digestible manner. I will say, you were asking about what was happening with the delinquencies on the CMBS, and I do have that data, but I will tell you, the biggest thing is that the delinquency rate there is climbing. But overall, if you put all the asset classes, about 3.06%. So it's still
really low. And that's interesting that they're very similar.
So let me tell you where the differences are. Industrial, 0.43.
Shocking.
Right?
Shocking.
Okay, lodging. All right, the hotel industry, 5.6. So that's higher than the rest, not the highest. Multifamily, below 1%, right? 0.94.
They're shocker.
Office will shock you because year over year, those numbers were higher. Over the last 12 months, 1.62.
I'm surprised.
However, if you look at year over year, May, June, and July, it goes up from 4.2. 4.5, 4.96. Okay. So we're starting to see that uptake. 12-month retail, 6.57.
Send me those, and we'll include those that you use. No, seriously, so people can reference them and see the information in case they wrote the numbers down.
So look, guys, we are exhausted. It's been a long week. Our brains are mush. But I'm so glad that we were able to put together this information, and really this was our way of debriefing.
That's what I was going to say. It was totally a way to debrief and decompress, and now hopefully I can sleep, because whenever I go to these things, my brain just goes a million miles an hour. And even last night, if I got 4 hours of sleep, it was a lot, just because my brain was going. So thank you for letting us do our data dump of the convention, our data download. We appreciate you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
While Jennifer finds a sleeping bag somewhere in the office, we will bid you adieu.